Hello, dear listener, and welcome to another episode of Kissa Canteen. This is a collection of original short stories, some in English and some in Hindi. Stories that explore the many, many flavors of life. Some funny, some tragic, some drama, with a bit of romance sprinkled here and there. Stories that will add some sugar, some spice, and all things nice to your mundane daily lives or your commute to work. Hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please subscribe to my channel on Spotify, Amazon Music, or Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to leave your feedback on Spotify or connect with me on Instagram at Kissa Canteen Podcast or via email at kissacanteenpodcast@gmail.com. So, till date you've heard 3 stories about an army veteran in search of a purpose, a young professional desperate for some comfort in a big city, and about a kleptomaniac who almost loses everything just to keep his passion for things alive. Today's story is in 2 parts, so listen on. Kissa Canteen, Episode 4, House Guest. It had been 2 weeks since I had received the deed papers for my new house in Goa. This had been my dream all along, something that I had worked towards for the past 15 years as a very high-paying consultant in a very high-profile consulting firm. After living in cities all around the world, including the likes of Bombay, Bangalore, New York, Melbourne, and Shanghai, I had decided that a medium-sized villa on the banks of the river Zuari in Goa would be the perfect place to begin my super early retirement and ponder about what to do and what is my next venture in life. This had been my plan. I am what people in the corporate world would call a typical type A, overachiever, go-getter, multi-hyphenate, Forbes something under something. Look at Danny Rasquina, all the uncles and aunties would say in the old central government colony in Jamshedpur where I grew up. Look at how far he's come, how well he scored, how much he makes in a year. And their children would roll their eyes and say to themselves, look at how backwards his hair has gone, look how far his belly has progressed, look how much bullshit he says. But I never cared for that kind of criticism. I had a plan, and I would stick to it. All that Zindagi na milegi dobara funda did not excite me at all. The only problem was that I had no idea what my next venture would be. What does one do after a semi-long career that has consumed every moment of his life in the past 15 years? 15 years of surviving on 3 hours of sleep daily, swimming in pie charts, vacationing in PowerPoint presentations, and talking about complex investments on coffee dates. Not one of those dates had turned out well for me, by the way. The answer to almost everyone else would be a very simple one. My best friend, who now lives in Portugal and swims with the sharks once a year, suggested the obvious. You're in Goa, Danny boy. Open a cafe or an Airbnb, or just, relax for some time. Figure yourself out, find a date, get laid, get settled. You've got money saved up. I had thought of something exactly like this, but the problem was that I had no idea or interest in good food. Nor do I particularly enjoy meeting new people, and I absolutely hate small talk. And most of all, I had no idea about how to run a business by myself in the first place. I am great at giving people advice on how they should run their businesses as a consultant, but the stakes are much lower in those situations because my advice always comes with the disclaimer that it may or may not work. Take it or leave it, but make sure you pay me for it. So there I was, Dinesh Danny Rasquina, a veteran of the boardroom, clueless about how to live life at 40 years of age. Now, what do you picture when you imagine a house on the edge of a river in Goa? A picket fence in the backyard? Yes, it was there. A swing on the front porch? Yep, it was there. A little gazebo which no one ever uses except when guests come over? That was there as well. No wonder that me, Mr. Hustling Consultant, had chosen this very spot to re-evaluate my life. The villa was a slightly run-down old house with 2 stories, a row of hedges out front, flanking the low picket fence, and a huge bunch of bougainvillea shrubs with pink and white blossoms, and many thorns on the eastern edge, growing to about 4 feet high. I had made enough money to buy such a house 3 times over, so I chose to invest some of it in decorating the house to my taste. But it was easier said than done, of course. Ultra-fast turnarounds aren't exactly the forte of people who have embraced Susegard as a way of life. And why would they? Why would anyone expect them to do it fast? But as for myself, having quite literally lived in a culture where deadlines are, within quotation marks, yesterday, I found it quite challenging dealing with normal people. Things that should have been completed in a couple of days, like painting a fence or putting new bathroom fixtures or new lampshades, etc., seem to take 3 or 4 times the time. So, after a few days of standing around and watching the contractors setting up the new old house at a very leisurely pace, I decided that I will start doing things on my own. Speed the process up a bit. Every evening and in the dead of the night, I would move things around, tidying up after the workers, and then I would quietly take up one project at a time. Something simple. Something that I could finish in a night or 2 by staying up late. I would be up till 3 a.m. or sometimes even till the first flicker of daylight disturbed the night sky, chipping away, drilling, painting, or putting a fresh coat of polish on a wooden item with which I was not completely satisfied in the way that it had turned out. And all of this involves a lot of noise. But this little corner of the world was quite a few kilometers away from the next home, so the chances of anyone being disturbed was almost 0. And every day, when the contractors came back to the house, they would see some of their work for the day already finished, or their work from the previous days undone and then redone. This seemed to be confusing to them. I think it made them a little nervous. I'm sure that they had dealt with a lot of clients who were never satisfied with their work and at the last minute skimped out of paying whatever was due at the end of the project. But they had never met someone like me, a client who not only did their job for them but never complained, not even once. Was this Mr. Rasquina planning on refusing to pay too? What kind of a snobby rich client never complains and on top of that does our work for free? And so, it had appeared that they had gone and complained to their boss man, the ever hungry, ever busy Mr. Deshpande. Twice a week, I went down to the local fish market to get some fresh catch for the cook. Part of my plan to start eating healthy, you see. But one of those days, a few days after I had started doing things around the house on my own, Bossman Deshpande accosted me in the middle of the fish market. He was sweaty, agitated, and demanded an explanation for this peculiar behavior, brandishing a shocked-looking dead surmai fish at me. I was caught slightly off guard. This was new. But I assured the man that there was nothing to be afraid of. I just wanted things to be done in a certain way, at a certain pace, and this was my way of speeding things up. I was not going to complain as long as his minions kept working and kept arriving on time daily. A moment later, the now satisfied bossman Deshpande had bought that dead surmai and was on his way to get it deep fried in masala batter. And I realized, like an idiot, that if I ever wanted to actually complain about the quality and pace of work, the opportunity was now gone forever. Clever man, that Deshpande. And that's exactly how it went. The workers became a much more relaxed, more bidi smoking, chai drinking, auto-tune song listening bunch, and my night work became even more frantic, more hectic, more noisy and messier. Every night. And a part of me was actually loving it. This manual work drowned out some of the feelings of uselessness which was slowly starting to make sudden appearances in my thoughts, like drunk hecklers in the middle of a stand-up comedy show. One night, in the middle of January, when everything starts becoming slower and sleepier in Goa, with gym bro tourists and their scooties disappearing off the roads, I was working on a brand new marble template that I wanted to put up the next morning. I wanted to replace the jagged, broken one that screamed old and abandoned and haunted house to passers-by. I had been working on this plate for the past many nights, and it was almost done. I felt proud. This was definitely an improvement upon the yellowing, laminated paper nameplate that was still sellotaped to my parents' home in Jamshedpur. My old man would be proud when he came over next month to visit. Just then, I felt a little swish to my left and a tiny, almost obscure little movement. I looked around and there was nothing. Maybe it was just me being extra tired with all the hard manual labor that I had been doing. Maybe I was just disoriented. Small town silence can be very strange to someone who's used to big city life. I went back to shining my new nameplate. Rasquina Roost, it said. I liked the ring of it. Very creative. But then, the sound happened again. And again. This time, right in front of me. Right in front of the table on which I was bent over. A shuffling and a light footfall. Almost like a dog's patter. Have you ever had this kind of an eerie experience? Ever? Doesn't your body just freeze up completely? These are things that no one ever wants to experience, right? A strange, otherworldly reference to what we are most afraid of and understand nothing about. Death and the beyond, if there is one. But, of course, I had to look, didn't I? So, very slowly, I lifted my head and found myself staring directly into a very pale and very wrinkled female face, with yellowish eyes and wispy grey hair tied tightly into a bun. I froze. Humans have a fight or flight switch as well, but that seemed to have flipped a fuse. And in a few seconds, even as I started unfreezing, even as a part of my mind started saying, dude, you need to get the hell out of this house and get a cab. Oh, but wait, Uber doesn't work in Goa. The old woman held up a fat, thick, pale, ghostly finger to her lips and held up a notepad. There were some things written on the notepad, but I couldn't read them. I mean, it's not every day that a ghost turns up and asks you to shut up like a school teacher, right? But then, the ghostly old woman moved the notepad directly into my view, effectively blocking her own face, and I was now forced to read it. It read, "Hello, I am Sandra. I've been dead for 20 years and I live here. I am dumb but not deaf. I will not hurt you. There is no need to shout, boy." Having read this, I looked at my old, new housemate again. It was as Sandra as a Sandra from Goa could be. Barely above 5 feet tall, perched on high and pale platform heels, slightly slouching and wearing a flowy, flowery, old but clean nightie, Sandra was the spitting image of the lady that I was used to buying my bakery items from at the local Panji market. I also noticed that Sandra was a little blurry around the edges and seemed to be floating ever so slightly, just like they had described the ghosts and spirits in the Harry Potter movies. I was convinced. I am dealing with a Goan auntie staying on at my dream riverside villa in her afterlife. I am doomed. While I was taking all of this in, dead Sandra auntie was busy scribbling on her notepad again. She held it up and it read, "Do you have to be so loud at night? It disturbs my reading time." Again, caught off guard with such a strange topic broached by a ghost, I replied, "I'm sorry, I didn't know that you lived here." Sandra scribbled again, "Well, I do. Almost all these old houses have people living in them. Apartments are too small, too much AC. Anyway, we are cold, it makes us feel even colder. So my friends and I live in villas, abandoned villas." I was quiet. I nodded. I didn't know what to say. And once again, Sandra scribbled, "This was my first serious boyfriend's house, you know. I always loved this place. Anyway, you need to be quiet." The "you" and the "quiet" were in all caps. "Just let these idiots do the work instead. You pay them, they need to work, no? Don't waste your money, you've already broken 2 fixed deposits for this house." And with this unsolicited and creepily well-researched life and financial advice, dead Sandra auntie wagged a fat, annoyed finger at me again and floated away into nothingness. As you may imagine, this extremely normal encounter had me shook for pretty much the whole of next day. It was said in the local gossip grapevine that the workers came the next morning and found their client, me, passed out clutching a half-polished marble nameplate. They panicked and they called their bossman. The bossman, annoyed by the fact that his fish lunch was again disrupted and scared again about not getting his money, rushed to my house and called an ambulance. The doctor who examined me at the hospital declared that I was absolutely fine, though my skin was ice cold to touch and I had several ulcers in my stomach and my arteries were all blocked. Once this was done, Bossman contractor dropped me back home and left, and I crawled into bed, sleeping through the day, and woke up in the evening to the sounds of power saws cutting through some side hedges. Well, now what was I supposed to do? Do any of you know of any white papers on how to evict polite ghost squatters? If yes, let me know. Hope you liked part 1 of this story. Tune in next time to know if Danny found a way out of this mess. This story was written and recorded by me, Anandroop Datta, with original cover art by Ritika Das. Please leave your feedback on Spotify or on my social handles. Any unauthorized digital copy of this content will be considered piracy. Stay tuned and see you next time. Thank you, folks.